What's going on, RotoBallers? Fantasy drafts are just around the corner. I'm Dave. I'm here to help you win that league. And this time, I have the strategy to do it. That's right. First, let's look at last season and what really worked last season and why. I think one of the best draft strategies you could have had last season was Hero RB. Why? Because you could get your RB1 in round 2 last year. I mean, let's not forget, Saquon, Derrick Henry, who finished as the RB1 and 2, you could have gotten at the end of the first, beginning of the second round last season. And then you could just load up with wideouts, elite tight end, elite quarterback, and not get your RB2 till way later. Maybe you just got a journeyman like a Tony Pollard or Brian Robinson. You could just slot in your RB2, or maybe you pieced it together throughout the season with like a Chase Brown and you lucked out. Whoever did that probably won their league. This year, I'm looking at ADP and I'm seeing a specific trend. I'm seeing 14 wide receivers who absolutely I'd feel comfortable being my wide receiver 1. Those are Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, your CeeDee Lambs, Amon-Ra, Nico Collins. But then you get down to Brian Thomas Jr. Yep, fine with that. Drake London, fine with that. A.J. Brown, fine with that. Ladd McConkey, Tyreek Hill. I'll go all the way down to JSN, and I'll cap it at T. Higgins, would probably be the last wideout I'd feel very comfortable being my wide receiver 1. And then there's a tier of like 25 wide receivers who I would consider in the running for wide receiver 2. So what does that tell you? That tells you you can nab your wide receiver 1. Then you can stock up on running backs. You can get yourself one of the elite quarterbacks. Heck, get yourself a George Kittle while you're at it. I love him this season. And then you can get your wide receiver 2 all the way down at pick, let's call it 70. So we're talking in certain drafts, certain team size leagues, 6th round, 7th round, possibly even in 10-team leagues. These are names like Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy, Jameson Williams at pick 62. I would absolutely feel comfortable with him as my wide receiver 2. Tet McMillan, who's going to be the number 1 target earner on an offense who I think is going to take a step forward with Bryce Young looking like he was finally figuring it out at the end of last season. I think this guy could easily have a 30% target share. Right under him, George Pickens, who's one of my favorite guys to pick this year. I mean, I just think he's absolutely perfect in this Dallas offense. The piece that Dak had been missing, and with a lot of tension on CeeDee Lamb, one-on-one down the sidelines, we all know Pickens is dangerous. So here's how I think it's shaking out this season. Round 1, depending on your draft spot, you try and lock up a top wide receiver or a top running back, and then you do the opposite of that in round 2. So if you picked your running back, if you got a Bijan Robinson or whatever, you're hoping a Drake London falls to you. You're hoping an A.J. Brown, Ladd McConkey, Tyreek Hill will certainly be there. You grab one of those, and then you just load up. Running back, you get yourself a Josh Allen, maybe you want a little value, you wait for Jalen Hurts. Yeah, get an elite tight end. You want Brock Bowers this year? You get yourself Brock Bowers this year. You got the time and picks to do it because you know you can just sit back and watch all these other people in your league stress out about getting all these wideouts. They've heard all these other sites tell them, oh, you got to hammer wide receiver in rounds 3, 4, 5. That is not how 2025 is shaking out. You do not have to do that. It is an embarrassment of riches in wide receiver. And then here's what I like doing. I grab my wide receiver 2 in round 6 or 7, and in the next round or 2, I'll tap it again because we have wide receivers like Jalen Waddle, who is 1 injury away from being a league winner. Calvin Ridley, another guy who I think is going to have a better quarterback this year and could have a 30% target share. And then one of my absolute favorite sleepers this year, Rome Odunze. I'm a Bears fan. There's no reason this guy can't be the number 1 target in a Ben Johnson offense, especially in the red zone. So there you have it. I think it's hero wide receiver this year. If you're new to fantasy football and it's all kind of a little overwhelming and just like, what do I do? Well, just follow this guide. Pick your wide receiver in either round 1 or round 2, and then grab your second wide receiver in round 6, 7, or 8. or all three if you want to get really crazy because you probably shored up your running back. And this way, your team has zero weaknesses, has a really nice floor with tons of ceiling. There you have it, folks. I'll be back next week. I'm going to do a whole study on what makes a league-winning running back. I'll be back with that. Like, subscribe. I'll see you next week.